Welcome to eNETEmployer, Canada's newest cloud-based payroll solution. Grab your favorite beverage and sit back for a few minutes as we take a whirlwind ride through the program. At the end of the video, we'll calculate a payroll and you'll see how easy it is to do payroll the eNETEmployer way. To make things easier, we've entered a complete payroll for you and we'll use the next few minutes to review the various screens and the related payroll data in each. Let's start by looking at the program's user interface. First, we'll log in and choose the payroll service. All eNETEmployer screens contain a series of tabs, menus, and buttons near the top of the screen. The topmost row of each screen is entitled the tab bar, with each tab providing access to a different module in the program. We're on the payroll tab right now as shown by the orange color. The row just below the tab bar is called the menu bar. Each of these menu options are contextual and will be different depending on the tab you are currently viewing. If we select a different tab, such as Employer, we will navigate away from the current section of the program and into the new section that we choose. For example, the Employer tab provides options for working with our company and its settings. The first two menu options are universal and will appear under all program tabs. These are the navigation and current user menus. The navigation menu provides options for moving easily across different screens and for quickly accessing recently viewed screens. This can save you the time of having to navigate through multiple tabs and menus when you frequently visit the same sections of the program. The user menu option will also appear on every program screen regardless of the current tab. Once you log into the program, you will see your assigned username as part of the button's label. This is followed by the @ sign and then typically your company name. The options under this menu allow you to work with your password as well as various options that control how you interact and use the program. Moving on, we come to the company menu. This menu includes options that are relevant to our business, such as our organization's name and address, business contacts, and operating divisions. The name and address screen that we're currently on allows us to define the location of our company. If we ever need to edit the information for most any screen in the program, we simply double-click on the desired row in the table. This places us into edit mode that activates each of the various cells for editing, and we can make our changes as needed. Once we've completed our changes, we can choose the Save icon. That's the orange check mark that is located at the left side of the row. Next is the company's contact screen. These options are used to define personnel in our organization that may be contacted if our payroll service provider has any questions regarding our use of the eNETEmployer service. We can enter contact persons based on their role in the company, such as administrative, technical, accounting, and so on. Just like the previous screen, if we wish to make changes to the row, we simply enter edit mode, as we did by double-clicking on the row, or we can right-click our mouse on the row and choose the Toggle Edit command to get in and out of edit mode. The final command under the company menu is entitled Divisions. Though it's not required in order to perform the payroll procedure, we may find it useful if our company is made up of more than one distinct operating part. Once we designate one or more divisions, we can group employees into each division for administrative and reporting purposes. The payroll menu provides options for working with payroll-specific tasks at a company level. This is where we set up the payroll name, its status, and whether it's applicable for calculating. The employee menu allows us to add new employees to the company who are not yet being assigned to a specific payroll. This can be useful if we have an employee who has been hired in advance and who will be assigned to a payroll at a later date. If you're ready to create your payroll and you already know which employees will be included, you would not enter them here, but rather you would do so under the Payroll tab. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes. The next menu, entitled Admin, includes options for managing the various people and staff who will be administering our payroll. And it also provides access to the payroll backup and restore tools. This concludes the quick review of the menus under the Employer tab. Now let's move on to the payroll-specific section of the program. Once we choose the Payroll tab, we enter the main section of the program that provides options for working with the actual payroll and its corresponding employees. Let's begin by reviewing the various options under the current payroll menu. As part of the task of defining our payroll, we must move logically through this menu from top to bottom and enter the data for each screen in the order shown here. The first two options, entitled Name and Address and Contacts, are quite similar to those found under the Employer tab, so we'll skip those two. The next option is the Control screen. This screen is used to set the frequency at which the payroll will be calculated. For example, our sample payroll has biweekly 26 option applied, and if we edit the row, we can view a list of the other pay period frequencies that can be used in our payroll. The maximum net amount cell is included as a safeguard and is used to specify the maximum amount that can be issued by any single check or EFT. If this amount is breached, the program will provide us with a warning only that the amount has been exceeded. It will not prevent the payroll from being calculated. The next menu item is entitled Business Accounts, and this screen is used to define the information that relates to our company's business number. In our sample payroll, we have two accounts set up, one for the full rate and one for the reduced rate. If we come across a word or term that needs explanation, simply press the F1 key on your keyboard at any time, or use the handy question mark help icon located at the top of the table. This will display the online help system that describes each column and page in detail. All descriptions are provided in alphabetical order to make it easier to locate the item for which you are searching. The top section of the help also contains a text-based index of each of the program's menu commands. A how-to section is also included that shows other useful videos like the one you're currently watching. And a full text search option is also included if you need to find an exact term. The next screen is entitled Earnings. This screen allows us to work with the payroll earning records that control the wages or salary for each employee. You can see that we've already entered some common hourly based earnings such as regular and overtime. And we've also entered several salary-based types, such as salary and bonus. If we want to enter a new earning, we can choose the New button from the button bar at the top of the table. This inserts a new earning row into the table and we can begin defining its information. Then moving from left to right, we can use the various cells to define the earnings details. For example, let's enter commission as the name, and then we'll move to the short name cell and enter COM. The program will use the COM abbreviation anytime space restrictions are needed, such as when printing the employee pay stub. Next, we'll move to the type cell and verify that the type is set to salary. This type of earning is used to pay employees a set amount that does not change each pay period. For example, salaries, commissions, bonuses, and so on. The calculate method for our commission earning will be set to individually. This means that the earning amount will not be calculated based on a multiplier of another earning, nor as a set fixed amount either. Rather, it will be based on the specific commission amount that each individual employee has earned for the period. If we were using the fixed amount option, the earning would use a set value that you would enter in the fixed amount cell beside it. Scrolling over to the right, we can see that the T4 box defaults to T414, Employee Income. Since this is a commission type earning, we must click on the drop-down list and change it to T442, Employment Commissions. And lastly, we'll select the taxable option and then remove the check from EI hours, as this earning type does not apply. With the settings complete for the new earning, we can now scroll to the left and save the row. We can apply this new earning to our employees later on when we visit the Earning Items screen. The next menu item is entitled Functions. Functions are algebraic formulas and methods that can be used to automate the calculation of various items in your payroll, such as your deductions, benefits, accumulators, and so on. Functions can be used for simple calculations, such as a garnishment where a flat percentage of the employee's wage is deducted each pay period, or for complex calculations where multiple items are involved. For example, a pension deduction where the deduction amount is the sum of specified earnings that are multiplied by a set percentage. In our sample payroll, the vacation pay function is used to calculate each employee's vacation pay. The function takes a sum of A, B, C, and D and multiplies that sum by 4%. If we expand the row, we can see that each variable can be defined as needed and based on a variety of earning items, defined values, or even statutory pay amounts. The next menu item, entitled Deductions, allows us to enter items that will be subtracted from the employee's pay. There are many examples of regular deductions, such as dental plan and life insurance premiums, pension contributions, union dues, garnishee orders, and so on. Statutory deductions, such as income tax, CPP, EI premiums, and so on, are automatically calculated by the program and do not need to be entered here. Our sample payroll includes 3 deductions: a group insurance deduction based on a percentage of each employee's regular earnings, an RSP deduction based on a function that multiplies a percentage of each employee's earnings by 4%, as described earlier, and a third deduction that garnishes a flat percentage of the employee's wage each pay period. The Benefits menu command displays the taxable and non-taxable benefits that have been set up for the payroll. In many situations, both deductions and benefits are related. Therefore, when we create a deduction in eNETEmployer, a corresponding benefit is also created. We have the option of utilizing the deduction only, the benefit only, or both. eNETEmployer will allocate these costs to all the areas and departments in which the employee works. As you can see, the various benefits in our sample payroll are closely related to the deductions to which they are associated. The next option in the menu allows us to work with accumulator records. These are used to collect or build up amounts that will be used in various payroll calculations. Accumulators keep a running total of specified information or amounts and can be used to automatically generate earnings or hours for the current pay. The most common use of accumulators is to calculate vacation pay owing to the employee or to disperse vacation pay on each check. Other common uses of accumulators are to calculate sick entitlements, seniority time, bank time, and so on. The next menu item is WCB. This screen is used to enter our company's provincial or territorial workers' compensation board rates. If our business employs workers who fall into a category that require WCB coverage, we must register with the provincial WCB so we can remit our WCB insurance premiums. The next option is entitled Health. This screen allows us to enter our company's provincial health rates if they're applicable for our province. The next option is entitled EFT, and this screen is used to enter the banking information for our company if we plan to use the electronic funds transfer feature to pay our employees. Also referred to as direct deposit, the program will create an electronic file that can be forwarded to our company's bank or financial institution for distribution in up to 3 separate accounts per employee. The CSB screen allows us to specify the settings that will be used for an electronic file that can be submitted to the Bank of Canada for employees who use the Canada Savings Bond Deductions Program. The next option in the menu allows us to work with distribution codes, codes that are used by the program to translate allocated hours and amounts that correspond to a general ledger entry. Many businesses prefer to use distributions to break down hours by department, and eNETEmployer uses distributions for this purpose. For example, when we set up an employee in the payroll, we can assign a default distribution code such as sales or marketing so that the employee's work time can be allocated accordingly. The final option in the menu is entitled Templates. This screen is used to create and edit employee templates. These are the records that contain preset information about similar types of workers. Templates are useful in simplifying the setup process for new employees, since we can define the details needed for one staff member and then apply them with one click to many new staff members that share similar employment characteristics. For example, employees that work in the company factory may have hourly-based earnings, such as regular overtime, shift premiums, and so on, while office employees may be assigned salary-based earnings. In this case, we would set up a separate template for each employee, hourly and salary, so that each time an hourly employee is added to the payroll, they would automatically be assigned the appropriate earning types, along with any other item that is applicable for these types of employees. And that concludes the payroll-related options under the current payroll menu. Now we can move forward to the employee-related options found under the employee menu. This menu provides options for working with employee-specific tasks, such as entering their work hours, managing their individual earnings, deductions, accumulators, and much more. The Setup Employee screen is where it all begins. This screen is used to define the detailed payroll, tax, payment, and all other settings required for each individual employee in the payroll. Each row represents a distinct employee and can be edited as needed. Before we proceed with the first 5 options under the employee menu, it's important to make a distinction about these first 5 commands, starting with Setup Employee and down through to tax parameters. Though each of these 5 menu commands will open a different screen with many unique data cells for each screen, each of the 5 actually share from the same pool of over 60 data points that can be assigned to each employee. We've simply taken the 60+ data points and distributed them logically under each of these 5 screens. This makes it easier for you to quickly locate certain types of employee data. To demonstrate this, let's take a look at the 10 columns that appear here under the Setup Employee screen by default, starting with surname and ending with template. These 10 columns are considered the default options that are required when you first begin setting up your employee in the payroll. Once this screen and its 10 columns are completed, you would continue working your way through the remaining options under the employee menu, including their address setup, their status in the payroll, how they're to be paid, and their detailed tax information, and so on. However, all of the options found across these 5 menu commands can actually be modified right on the current screen because we're able to add columns, remove columns, or rearrange columns exactly as we need using the program's unique Customize View feature. Let's demonstrate the feature by choosing the Customize View button from the button bar that appears above the table. The right side of the Customize View window corresponds to the visible columns that we see on the current screen. For example, surname and given name, ending with template, correspond to surname and given name and template here in the visible columns list. On the left side of the window, it's entitled Available Columns, and this shows all of the columns that we can add to the visible side as needed. We can move these columns over one at a time by selecting them and dragging drop. We can also move them by clicking on one of the names and using the arrows in the center. We can even double-click on a column to have it move over automatically. To move multiple columns in one step, simply hold down the Control key on your keyboard as you select each column, and then you can use the arrows in the center to move them as a group. For our lesson, we'll take the email column and we'll move it to the right after template. Take note of where the template column is in relation to email, because when we save this customized view, our columns are rearranged and email now appears right after template. This revised collection of columns is now considered a custom view, and if you look at the Select View button, you'll notice that the label is changed from default to read View 1. If we select the button, we can see the original default view is still available for us to choose. For our sample payroll, we've also created a custom view entitled New Employee Setup. It contains only those columns that are relevant to our sample payroll, and it excludes any columns we do not use. As mentioned earlier, the Customize View feature can be used on any screen in the program in order to show, hide, or rearrange any of the columns anytime as needed. And one of the most powerful ways to use the customized views is in conjunction with our export feature. If we choose the Export button from any screen, the content of the current screen is saved to a CSV file that can be opened in any spreadsheet program. This allows us to create detailed, customized reports using the data from any program screen. And once you're in the spreadsheet, you can apply any type of function or formatting as needed. So with the first 5 menu options covered, let's move on to the employee bank accounts. This screen is used to define bank account information for each employee if you're using the Electronic Funds Transfer or EFT feature to pay employees. Although an employee must have at least one bank account enabled in order to be paid using EFT, each employee can have their net pay distributed in up to 3 of their bank accounts. If we choose the Expand row icon beside Gregory House, we can see that his wages will be distributed into 2 accounts, $1,000 maximum into his first bank account, and the remainder into his credit union account. Choosing the next menu option, we come to Employee Earnings. This screen is used to define the various wage types that each employee will earn in the payroll. You can add a new item for an employee by choosing the Add Earning button. Earnings that appear in this drop-down list correspond to those that were created in the Earnings screen, as we discussed earlier in the lesson when we were under the Current Payroll menu. For example, if we expand the row for Gregory, we can view the various sub-rows that allow us to individually tailor each earning item as needed. Choosing the next menu option, we come to Deductions and Benefits. This screen allows us to assign non-statutory deductions and their related benefit items when applicable to the various employees in the payroll. As with the previous screen, you can add a new item for an employee by choosing the Add Deduction and Benefit button. Deductions and benefits that appear in this drop-down list correspond to those that were created earlier in the Deductions and/or Benefits screens located under the Current Payroll menu. Again, if we expand Gregory's row, we can view the various sub-rows that allow us to individually tailor these items as needed. The next menu option is entitled Accumulator Items, and this screen allows us to work with the records that collect or build up amounts that will be used in various payroll calculations. As with the previous screen, we can assign new accumulator items to an employee by choosing the Add Accumulator button. All earnings, deductions, benefits, accumulators, and statutory items accrue year-to-date values over the year and represent the total of all monies or hours that were paid to or accrued by those items for the current year. Although most payroll situations will typically use these values as the final amounts for year-end purposes, you may encounter a situation where you need to adjust the amounts manually. For example, the year-to-date earnings screen allows you to view and modify the year-to-date values for each employee's individual earnings. One common example for year-to-date adjustments is when you're moving to a new payroll program and need to define the current payroll amounts for your employees. That is, if any paychecks have been issued for the year, these year-to-date amounts will need to be entered in order to ensure that the T4 is balanced at the end of the year. If we choose the Expand row beside one of our employees, Gregory, we can view the various year-to-date totals for each of his earnings. And as with all eNETEmployer screens, double-clicking on a row allows us to edit the values. The next 2 menu commands are very similar to the current screen and are used to view or adjust year-to-date values for both deductions and benefits and accumulators. The Import Employee screen displays a list of employees who exist in a location that is outside of the current payroll and who can be imported into the current payroll if needed. Examples of employees that may appear on the screen would be those that exist in other payrolls or employees who were set up under the Employer tab and who are not yet assigned to a given payroll. Now that we've set up our company, payroll, and employee details, it's time to process the payroll. We begin this part of the process by choosing the Payroll Processing Speedy Update command. This screen provides a quick method of entering the hours that your employees have worked for the pay period. Although you can enter work hours under the Employee Earning Items command, as we discussed earlier, the Speedy Update page makes the process much more efficient in that it removes redundant options and includes those only that pertain to hours entry. As you can see, our demo payroll consists of only 5 employees, employees 1 through 5. If you look under the total hours column, you'll notice that 2 of the employees have the number 80 appearing for each of them. This means that these 2 people are salary-based employees, and since salary hours carry over from each pay period, we won't need to update their hours for the period. The program will do that automatically. This means that the remaining 3 employees, who show a 0 value, are hourly-based employees, and they will need to have their work hours entered for the pay period. We'll perform the hours entry procedure right here in this screen. So let's use the column sort feature to make it a little bit easier for us to edit these rows. If we click on the total hours column, the sort order changes so that the salary employees are now listed at the top, followed by the 3 hourly employees at the bottom. And if we move back to the column header and click on the words once again, the sort order is reversed. So now we're ready to enter the work hours for all of the hourly based employees who currently show 0. To quickly edit these employees, we can either double-click on the first row to activate edit mode for that single employee, or since we're editing multiple employees, we can select the initial row in a group of rows that needs editing, and then hold down the Shift key on our keyboard as we select the last row in the group. This highlights the consecutive series of rows. And once the necessary rows are highlighted, we can right-click on the table and choose the Edit Toggle Edit command. And now all of the rows are activated for editing. So now let's scroll over to the right slightly so we can see the various hours columns a little bit better. And as you can see, all of the hourly based employees show 0 hours. For our lesson, we'll enter 80 hours worked for 2 of the employees, and also some overtime hours for 1 employee who put some extra time in on the job that week. So let's enter 80 for this one, and the third one, and as well overtime hours 25. So now we need to save the changes that we've made to these 3 hourly based employees. Instead of choosing the save icon for each row as we've done in the past, we can right click on the table and choose the Edit Accept All command. This accepts the changes for all of the highlighted rows. And that completes the data entry portion of the process. Now we can calculate the payroll and then verify our pay hours and rates. To do so, let's choose the Payroll Processing Calculations command. This opens the calculation screen that allows us to define the required settings for performing our calculations for the current payroll. The table displays a historical list of previous calculations, including pertinent data such as the pay type and the payroll start and end dates. A pay run may be calculated as many times as needed before we close it. This provides us the opportunity to review the pay run details or to review anything else that we deem necessary. Before calculating any pay run, it's important to review the start date, end date, and pay date, which is often referred to as the check date. As you can see, the status for our demo payroll shows new because this payroll has not yet been closed. So we're now ready to proceed with the payroll calculation. Let's choose the Calculate button. And once the calculations are complete, a message will appear at the top of the table stating if the pay has been calculated successfully. It will also mention to check the report and save a backup before closing the pay. Notice that the status column indicates that the payroll has indeed now been calculated. If we refer to the message at the top of the table, the program also suggests that we view a report to verify our payroll numbers. In this case, it's referring to the Interim Payroll Register report. If we look to the right, we can see the Generate Report button. And if we choose the button, an Interim Payroll Register is generated and we can now review our payroll. Depending on your browser settings, the resulting PDF file will either be stored in your Downloads folder, or you may be presented with a dialog box that will prompt you where to save the file. For our lesson, I can click directly on the PDF button that has appeared at the bottom of my browser window. Let's zoom in slightly on the Payroll Register report, and notice how the word interim appears as a watermark in the background. This watermark will be removed once the payroll is closed. As we scroll through the pay register, we can see that each employee has been paid accordingly, both salary and hourly types. And once we reach the end of the employee list, we can see their overall totals shown here. Active employees 5 and paid employees 5. And as we scroll down further to the last page in the report, we can see the different business accounts that exist in the payroll, full rate and reduced rate. So let's close the report and return to our payroll. And now, as is the case before closing any payroll, we must first create a backup file. So let's do that by choosing the backup button. And now that our backup has been created and the data has been verified using the interim payroll register report, we can finalize our payroll by choosing the Close button. Once complete, the program again displays a note stating that the close function was successful and that we can now insert a new pay sequence when we are ready to begin our next payroll. This completes the payroll processing step. We can now run our reports as needed to complete the pay cycle. Let's do that by opening the report screen and choosing the Payroll Processing Reports menu. When the screen appears, click on the drop-down list that appears beside the New button. This list contains the various reports that you can create with the program. For example, if you want to produce our employee pay statements, we would choose the Pay Statements option. Since our sample payroll includes a combination of EFT and printed checks, let's use the Pay Statements with Checks option instead. Now when we select the New button, our report row is inserted into the table. And if you scroll through the row, you can see the various options that can be modified as needed. For our lesson, we'll place a check in the background box. This will instruct the program to include a background image for our statement that shows outlines and borders, making the statement easier to read. Note, if you're using a pre-printed company statement form, you would remove the check from this cell since your forms will already include the statement borders. Once the settings are complete, we can save the row and then select the Generate Report button. When the report is ready, we can review the pay statement data for each of the employees. The top portion of each page shows each employee's pay statement along with the totals from the current pay period and accumulated year-to-date totals. The bottom section of the report includes the check data for each employee. In our sample payroll, all of the employees were paid via EFT, so the words EFT void appear to indicate that a printed check does not apply for the current employee. However, if we move to the next employee, we can see that this one actually does have a printed check generated along with her EFT. This corresponds to the earlier part of our lesson where we saw that this employee was assigned 2 bank accounts for the wage distribution, a portion designated for an EFT transaction and the remaining portion for a printed check. Continuing through the remaining report options, you can create other documents such as journal entries, check registers, ROEs, workers' compensation reports, and more. To close off the lesson, we'll create the EFT file that will be used by our company's bank in order to process the individual employee payments. We'll choose the Generate EFTs option from the drop-down list, and then select the New button once again to insert another report row. Once the row appears, we can choose the Generate Report button to create the EFT file. Again, depending on your browser settings, the resulting EFT file will either be stored in your Downloads folder automatically, or you may be prompted where the file should be saved. For our lesson, I can choose the Show in Folder command. and I can see that the EFT file has been stored in my computer. This file can now be transmitted to our company's bank for final processing. This completes the eNETEmployer program overview. As you can see, the program is easy to work with and offers a wide host of options that will allow you to manage even the most complex of payroll scenarios. As always, if there's a feature with which you need some extra assistance, simply press F1 at any time to open the online help. The help system will provide a useful description and should provide the additional information that you need. We hope that you found the lesson useful and ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel for more how-to videos. Thanks for watching.